Hello everyone, my name is Nanette Whitman-Holmes. I am with the Bridges program here in Helena, and we are bringing you a Bridges virtual program. Bridges is concerned with the life enrichment for people here in the Helena area. We like to bring educational and social opportunities to people over 55, and we're very happy to do that. Hopefully we can be back in person soon. Today I have Susan Gobbs with me. She has worked as an attorney for 33 years. She's a graduate of MSU and U of M, so nice dual allegiance there. Susan currently works as a contract attorney with the Legal Services Developer Program, which is part of the Aging Services Program, which is also then part of the Senior and Long-Term Care Division of DPHHS with the state. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
Today we are going to have you talk a little bit, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, but then we'd also like to know about powers of attorney and what you can tell us about that. So welcome.
Certainly. Thank you. I have been an attorney, as you said, for 33 years. The majority of my career has been here in Helena. I have worked with low-income and disabled people throughout my career. My office is a not very well-known part of DPHHS. We work for people who are 60 and older, Montanans 60 and older, and those with disabilities, to do counsel and advice on civil matters. We also do referrals. We help with simple estate planning. If you're a tribal member, you don't even have to be 60. We do estate planning documents for tribal members of all ages. In addition to which, I'm also the attorney who advises the Ombudsman program, which are the folks who go into the facilities. So suffice it to say, this is a pretty big job, and it's a pretty lovely job in terms of the people I encounter and the stuff I am able to talk about. Today we wanted me to talk, as I understand it, about durable powers of attorney, and particularly if you've got somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's or has a diagnosis of that, or we think that that's an issue. So let me first start by talking about what a durable power of attorney is. A power of attorney is a written document where someone gives someone else some authority over their affairs. The person who gives the authority would be the principal. The person who gets the authority is the agent. Durable means that once you sign this document, although it can be revoked, it stays in place when you become no longer able to manage your affairs. And so in Montana, we generally have three different kinds of powers of attorney. There is a financial power of attorney, where you give somebody the ability to handle your Social Security check, go to your bank, deal with your brokerage firm, pay your bills, that sort of thing. Then we have a medical power of attorney. That's the person who gets to make the decisions about your health care. A lot of older people may have a general power of attorney, which sort of combines both of those two powers of attorney. I prefer a medical and a financial because your bank doesn't need to know about your health care, and your doctor doesn't need to know what your bank information is. So those are documents that have to be in writing. You can't do them orally. And in addition to which, there are two different kinds. There are kinds with springing language and not springing language. Not springing language means that those go into effect immediately. It does not mean I give you all power and I lose all my power at that time. I'm just giving you access at that time. With springing language, it's generally based upon an event. The doctor has issued a statement saying you're no longer capable of making these kinds of decisions. Our office does not prefer springing because those statements can be very difficult to get. And if you can't get that statement and you can't make the decisions and the person you've designated can't make the decisions, nobody's driving the train. And so it is a lot of times better to go the immediate thing. What I find with a lot of seniors is they're very scared of these documents. These are much more emotionally challenging for people than actually doing their wills, because we're talking about giving somebody some control over your finances or your body, and that's scary. The one thing I like to do to talk to people is say that when you give a power of attorney, the agent stands behind the principal and props them up. And when the principal is no longer able to make the decisions, then the agent comes ahead. I also mentioned these are revocable. So that means if you give a power of attorney to someone and they start misusing it, you can revoke in writing and take that power away from them as long as you're capable of making that kind of decision. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Montana chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I've also encountered dementia in my personal life, so I have some familiarity with it. I think one of the big misnomers about this is the fact that we believe that once you've got a diagnosis, that's it. You've lost all your ability to make any decisions about anything. And that's not true for the most part. And it is not good for the family if you're talking about someone as if they're not in the room, because they're still in the room. And even if they are starting to get foggier and foggier and having more and more periods of time where they can't really make decisions, they have periods of lucidity, and they can be very sad and very angry because people are not treating them like the people that they are. So I think it's real important that just because someone has a diagnosis and they haven't done their powers of attorney, it doesn't mean all is lost. I will say that it is my personal opinion that everybody 18 and older needs to have powers of attorney. I don't care if you're married, you're single, if you have stuff, you don't have stuff, you could get in a car wreck. Your parents don't have authority when you're an adult. Your spouse doesn't necessarily have authority as an adult. And you need somebody to make those decisions if you can't make them for yourself. So that's my plug for everybody needs this, okay? But when somebody has started to develop signs of dementia, diagnosed or not, special care needs to be taken that this person understands what they're signing. These documents in some ways are much more complicated than a will, and we all think that signing a will is it is an important thing, but in terms of a scale of 1 to 10, what you need to know to do a will is down here. What you need to do a power of attorney or a long-term care contract is up here. So the thing that you need to understand is we need to work with the individual. Do you understand what you're doing? And generally this might take a couple, 3 visits. You might draft the document, have them look at it, maybe come back another day to sign it if they seem to be confused. Because, as we know, it comes and it goes. The hardest part of my job, I think, is when I have encountered people where it is too late. The spouses have waited just a little too long, and it's too late for them to sign those documents, and then you're looking at a guardianship or a conservatorship.
Excellent. So one question I might have is, can you have multiple people? You mentioned that there's different powers of attorney, so it doesn't have to be the same person.
It does not.
Okay. And how would you perhaps choose those people? Is it usually a spouse, or do you not choose a spouse, adult children?
Well, it depends on your circumstances, of course. Most married couples will designate their spouse. But if you're married to a pessimist like I am, who would unplug me when I wasn't plugged in, I might choose someone else. I have one child that's in the medical field. That child can be underneath my spouse, and generally what we recommend is you have one person, then you have a secondary. So you designate maybe your spouse. When they can't do it, then you designate your child. I particularly don't like to have joint powers of attorney because then you get fights. You know, I've had people say, well, I want my 7 kids as my agent. When's the last time your 7 kids agreed about anything, much less what to do with mom? So it's generally one person. It doesn't have to be your oldest son. A lot of times I'll see the guys get the financial and the women get the medical. I quite frankly prefer that the same person does both because it's the continuity's there. But I understand it's up to you to choose what you need to do. But generally a primary and then at least one secondary. So if something happens to the primary, the secondary can step in.
So Susan, maybe you can mention some of the decisions that are covered by a power of attorney. What are some of the things that happen there?
In a financial power of attorney, as I said before, this is all your financial decisions. So this is what bills to pay, whether we take stuff out of one money market account and put it into another account. All the things that would deal with your financial, talking to the VA and Social Security, although they want their own forms, dealing with your pension, your insurance, your this, your that, everything that's financial. One thing that we've started to do, which people certainly like, is we have a special instructions section. And particularly if you have more than one child and you're concerned that your other children are going to not understand how it's being handled, the financial power of attorney, the agent, can be required to keep records so that at any time if Adult Protective Services comes in or their siblings come in, they can say, look, this is how we've spent mom's money. And I think so much of the time what we deal with are communication issues. And that is something we'll simplify that. If the person that has the responsibility to manage the bills also knows they have a responsibility to essentially report. So that's sort of the financial part. On the healthcare stuff, it can be everything from, can you live at home alone anymore? Can we hire healthcare people? Can we fire healthcare people? Can we get you a new doctor? Can we send you to another hospital? Can we seek specialized services or not? So it's a pretty all-encompassing thing. And this is where I think it's really important to have, again, conversations. You don't ever want to appoint anybody as an agent that doesn't know they're going to be your agent. That's kind of an unpleasant surprise. And you want to talk about things like, do not resuscitate. Do you want to be on a respirator? Do you want your life prolonged? And the power of attorney that we use in our office is pretty broad. There's also another document called a living will. The living will tends to talk about your last illness. I don't want to be kept alive by artificial means. And there's a living will, and there's a living will appointment. The appointment, you appoint an agent, just like you do with the power of attorney. With the living will, you say to the doctors or your primary care providers, you get to make the decision. But again, it's real easy to not know what your parent wants or your spouse wants. And especially in these days of COVID, I think it's really important to talk about whether somebody wants to be on a respirator or not. And if you get those conversations in place, it will be easier for the person who has to make the decision because they know they're doing what their mom or their dad wanted them to do.
Excellent. So you were kind of touching on this, but the difference between that durable power of attorney versus a living will.
Right. A living will is a very short document. It basically says, you know, if I am not expected to recover and that my condition is terminal, I give the doctors or I give this person the authority to work with the doctors to determine the care. And it will say things like, I don't want to be artificially kept alive. Okay, you can get really specific. I don't want feeding tubes. I don't want a respirator. I don't want this or you don't want that. The thing about a living will is we never know when our last illness is. You don't get a timer like a turkey that pops up and says, this is your last illness. So consequently, the durable power of attorney, I think in a lot of ways, is the primary document. The living will is the backup. Because, again, you could be in a car wreck and that could be your last illness and you could be being kept alive. Or your kids think it's your last illness, you rally, and then it's not. So I think the durable power of attorney is a broader document and, in my mind, a more important document.
Excellent. Now, with a power of attorney, whether it's the healthcare one or the financial one, could a person make very special requests in those? Certainly.
We have done a medical power of attorney where we had someone who specifically requested that if they were on life support, that they did not want to be pulled off the life support until their church prayed over them for a week. You know, people have very specific things they want. Obviously, if you have someone who has a religious positions such as a Jehovah's Witness, where they don't want blood products, they don't want this, they don't want surgery, that needs to be in that durable power of attorney, so that their agent as well as their healthcare provider know exactly what they're looking at.
Excellent. And how about in a financial one? Could you also make special requests there?
That's where we talked about doing the accounting. But you could do special accounts. I've had people say, my kids can't spend more than $10,000 a month. Now, most people in Montana don't have those kinds of resources where they say you can't spend more than $10,000 a month. $10,000 was chosen because that would be the cost of having both of the parents in a care facility. You can request that your real property not be sold without another signature, and you might designate another child, or you might designate someone else. So you can craft these very specifically. I caution sometimes against that because you don't want to hamstring the agent. You don't want to make it so specific that they can't do their job when you can't do your job.
Wow, that's amazing. So if somebody was looking to have this done, I know your office periodically holds workshops around the state. Or like a private attorney or financial planner, where would somebody go if they wanted to see about getting this?
If they wanted to see this done, our program, the Legal Services Developer Program, serves people 60 and older, people with disabilities. We also do estate planning for tribal members. Now, we don't have an income limit, but we do have a complexity limit. And so consequently, if you have a lot of assets or your estate is very complex, we are not going to do that for you. Our stuff is free. It's designed to be for very simple estates. You can, obviously, there are numerous attorneys across the state and numerous attorneys here in Helena who will do your estate planning packets for you. We do have some documents on our website, but again, we don't advise anyone to do any of these documents without seeking counsel.
Excellent. That was going to be my next question. Can somebody do this by themselves?
You can, but you screw it up a lot. I see a lot of mistakes that people make because they didn't go to school to know how to do this, and it might seem simple in their mind, and it's deceptively complex under the surface.
Yeah. Well, that's a reason to call in a professional, definitely.
Right.
Now, if somebody just didn't have this done, is there any way that say a spouse, we were talking earlier about somebody with Alzheimer's, can you go back and do it at a certain point? For like, what would be a cutoff point where?
Well, part of it has to be that the person has to understand what they're doing.
Excellent.
And if they are so far into their disease process that they don't know who they're married to, they don't know who their kids are, they don't know what they have, that person is no longer capable of making those kind of decisions. And in that case, you may have to seek a guardianship or a conservatorship from the district court in order to handle these affairs that could have been handled with a durable power of attorney had it been done early enough in the process.
Excellent. So it's certainly much better to do this before.
Much
proactively,
better.
not reactively.
Yes.
Excellent. So with your job, doing that, what are some of the things that you really want to educate people about before they have to do this, like maybe going into this process, what they're thinking about? What are some of the things that they would have to gather together?
Well, we talk about, particularly if you're talking about a will, then we talk about knowing what you have. Do you have a house? There are different ways to leave the house. It could be left in probate. It could be left outside of probate. You need to know who all your kids are. I cannot tell you how many times we work with people and they call us back and say, oh, I forgot that kid. We are estranged and I'm not leaving the kid anything. Well, if you don't put them in the will, they can challenge the will. So you need to think about who you love, what you have, and what ultimately you want done. However, I also have had people who want to, as I call it, direct traffic from the grave. And you can't guarantee that what you want to happen will happen once you're dead. And you don't want to hamstring your heirs because of some notion you had when you are long gone. You don't want them to have to go to court to say, Mom's been dead for 5 years and we really do want to get rid of the piano, truly, So a lot of this is just thinking about that. When we work with people, we send them an intake packet, and that packet will have all the questions that we will need the answers for, and then we walk them through that either in a live clinic or over the phone, and we make sure that we're following what they want. And a lot of times what comes in the intake packet, when you have the discussions, turns out not to be what they want.
Wow.
And this is, again, just a big conversation.
I can see that. The communication part is huge.
It's huge.
It sounds like. So if somebody wanted to ask some questions of your office, how would they go about getting a hold of you? What's the easiest way?
Okay, well, you can go to the website. So if you go to montana.gov/DPHHS/senior long-term care / probably not the easiest way.
Yes.
Our phone number here is 444-7787. We have 3 people, including Katie Lovell, who is the legal services developer, who is my boss. They do the intakes. I work with a couple of paralegals. You can't call and talk to me directly, nor can you call and talk to the paralegals directly. You get screened, we get some factual information, and they turn the cases over to us.
Excellent. And right now, kind of what would the lead time be on this? So if somebody
wanted
your office today,
if they could get a response pretty rapidly. Documents could take a few months, could take 3 or 4 months.
excellent. So
We did our last live clinic was here in Helena in October. We generally don't do them in the winter. When we have done them during COVID season, we have been masked, we have temperature checked, we've had plexiglass, we have taken every precaution we could to make sure that our most vulnerable folks are taken care of. But I don't think we'll do that again until probably April. So if somebody wanted documents now, they could certainly call, and we would send them out an intake packet, and when we got that back, we put them on the list.
excellent. Get that ball rolling anyway. Well, Susan, thank you so much for all this good information today. I hope that people take this information and really do what they need to do with it to protect their themselves and their estate with that. Any last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
I think we talked a lot about doing stuff proactively. And lawyers get a bad name because people come to us when they haven't done stuff proactively, and then there is a big mess. I really appreciate this opportunity to present. I was an elementary school teacher before I went to law school, and I love educating people, so thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you.